Welcome to the Johnny Loves Movies podcast, and today we're talking about Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Recently, Daredevil Born Again Season 2 just released this penultimate episode, and I really wanted to just discuss this discourse that's going on between Daredevil Born Again. It's a big trend that I'm noticing on all the social media sites such as YouTube, Reddit, X, and Threads. There's a lot of people who are glazing the original Netflix series and they refuse to acknowledge the growth that Daredevil has always needed to be closer to the comic book adaptations. I really been enjoying season 2 of Daredevil Born Again. It's the closest that we're going to probably get to a actual adaptation of the Daredevil comic book that pleases both the fans of the source material and the people who continuously glaze the Netflix show, even though they don't want to admit that this show is very close to the comic book. And I really am starting to notice a distinction between fans of the Netflix series and fans of the original IP. And what I can really just tell you right now, from watching Born Again season 2, this is definitely what Daredevil needed. This is definitely what the doctor has ordered. And so I really just wanted to discuss why you're seeing a 52% drop from the first season of Born Again and this season. And I got to say, first and foremost, one of the biggest common criticisms that I see from the people who glaze the Netflix series is the fact that, well, this show is not a weekly binge show. This show is a week to week show. It's not you can't binge the show because a show can't be successful if you just do it week to week. You got to do it binge like the Netflix model. And Disney for some reason keep on not following the Netflix model because Disney's the only streaming service that actually does week to week. Because Netflix you binging. Yeah, it's the whole binge model myth. These guys who continuously blow the Netflix original series refuse to have any type of good faith argument or any type of acknowledgement that Disney is not the only corporation doing week to week models. As a matter of fact, you have HBO Max that does week to week. You got Prime that does week to week. You got Hulu that does the week to every streamer that's not Netflix does week to week releases. But these guys who claim to be the authority on quality and what a TV show should be, these Glazers continuously bring up the fact that this is not a binge model, and that's why Netflix Daredevil was successful. And essentially what they're saying is that this show is not successful because it does week to week like regular network TV, and I need to watch my show on a binge because it's a binge, and you can't be successful if you're week to week, knowing damn well the Game of Thrones exists, Last of Us exists, and Paradise exists. And guess what? All of those shows, The Boys exist. And guess what? All of those shows are week to week. But the number one common complaint that I see for the reason why this show is not doing well is because it's not a binge show. It's a week to week show. Another thing that I've noticed that is keeping this show back and why the show is down 52% is the Netflix glaze. People have like rose tinted glasses when it comes to the Netflix show. Like that show hit 1,000 every time for some reason. The people they refuse to acknowledge that season 2 of that original Netflix series had a tremendous dip of quality once they got past the trial of the Punisher. They refused to acknowledge that the show was very cheap looking. Like they always had poor lighting. It was always on a warehouse or some type of hallway. It was never grandiose in scope. They refuse to even acknowledge that the yellow piss filter was distracting, or the fact that they were just too cheap to actually showcase Daredevil's powers or even acknowledge he's a superhero because they're chasing prestige. They refuse to acknowledge that, and they just want to say this is the perfect show, the most perfect show they've ever seen. And that for some reason, when Disney decided to not only distribute and produce their own property show, somehow it dipped in quality. And I got to say, this Netflix glaze is also a symptom of the grift to hate on Disney, because if you hate on Disney, you make money by hating on Disney. You can't say positive stuff. So I really feel like that Netflix glaze is the second reason. People just won't let that Netflix shit go. And honestly, I gotta say, the stuff that Netflix shows based on the Frank Miller stuff isn't even the best Daredevil stuff. Like there's a lot of great Daredevil story arcs that happens after Frank Miller. Daredevil existed before Frank Miller, and it will exist long after. Just like Daredevil existed before the Netflix show and will exist long after the Netflix show. But I feel like people who want to hold on to the glazing of Netflix, they refuse to acknowledge the growth that Daredevil needs, and they refuse to accept the fact that this character is getting closer to the comic book adaptation, and that's another reason why it's down 52%. The third biggest reason that I see because is the Mayor Fisk storyline. It's too close to home. There's no escapism. It's like watching the news. I mean, what you seen him do on Born Again season 2, we see in our everyday life. So there's no escapism. So I see why a lot of people choose to avoid it. And you hear the argument that they don't want their politics in comic book shows or and media, and they forget the fact that comic books have always been political, right? They have always been politicized. X-Men. Do I need I say more? So, to me, it's a weak sauce argument because comic books has always been political, but I understand why um, they are resistant to watch the second season of Daredevil because of the fact that um, it's became a very um I'm trying to find a word. It just became very of the moment. And it's ripped right out of the presses, right off the front page news. So I understand exactly why people are based on that argument, why they are not watching it as much as they were watching the first season because you can escape. You can't escape. It's a very emotionally draining, emotionally devastating television show. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the original series, but I refuse to be locked into a prison of nostalgia. Born Again season 2 isn't the Frankenstein season that the first season was. Its character is finally being allowed to breathe outside of that box that was started in 2013. And so now I want to list the five reasons why I think that this show surpasses the Netflix series in a lot of ways. The first being the Disney Plus budget. Okay, this found is a foundation that makes everything else possible. The increased budget allows for a level of production quality that Netflix series just simply could not touch. The acrobatics and the power scaling, for one, um, with more resources at their disposal, the show finally displays Matt Murdock's comic accurate agility. In the original series, he was often grounded by budget constraints. Here, he can actually move with the speed and swashbuckling style that matches his comic book feats. Another thing is technology. The budget upgrade is visible in the refined design of the Billy Club, or as I like to call it, the Sling-a-Ding, which functions as a versatile grappling hook and mobility tool. And then also, I mean, the original series on location, was on location, was on shot on location. It was very authentic. And this show is on location, but the show also invests in the high cost filming across New York rather than being relegated to like a soundstage or a warehouse that's dimly lit. It can afford having more higher end stand-in locations, and it also gives the street level setting a richer, more authentic feel because you're able to actually be in the streets of New York and you're not on rooftops or dark hallways or poorly lit rooms. The second reason is creative continuity and legacy rebuilding. Unlike the clean break that they were initially planned, and I'm actually very happy that they didn't do the clean break and they were able to incorporate that continuity and build off of that, embracing a more rebuilding type of model that honors the past while fixing it fixing the cliffhangers. When I say fixing it, the MCU is using Born Again to provide some level of redemption for characters like Iron Fist, whose original series ended on diverse of cliffhangers. And I like Dario Scarter-Payne. I think, he did a great job when he show ran The Punisher, and he's doing a great job right now. He's shown to be more inclusive for the fans' desire of more comic book accurate takes on these characters, which is a major step up from the chopped up feeling that I felt like from the earlier drafts of that season and moments of the Netflix series. Just being able to embrace the comic booky aspects of Daredevil and not being ashamed of it because they want to chase prestige or become like Netflix's next Game of Thrones or their next Last of Us, those prestigious dramas. Like they were able to just embrace it for the better. And now we're going to go up to our third point, which is the dynamic crossover potential. Matt Murdock is no longer trapped in that Defenders bubbles. He has made appearances on shows like Echo. He has made appearances on She-Hulk. I mean, no matter how you feel about the show, he was certainly a highlight on the show, and there's another side to Matt Murdock that we never got to see on the Netflix show, which is that swashbuckler. We never got to see that shade of that character, and so they were able to expand that bubble. He was in Spider-Man: No Way Home. He's potentially in Brand New Day, so he's in that broader MCU, is no longer just like loosely connected, like they're firmly integrating him. And that interactive growth with his appearances in No Way Home and She-Hulk, and showcasing that range, from him being just a high stakes lawyer to a hero with a sense of humor, before returning back to this show, is an added benefit. And honestly, it's going to lead to long term relevance. Being in the MCU ensures that the street level conflicts like the Mayor Fisk run that's happening right now will have ripple effects in future films. And I can tell you, for example, the biggest ripple effect will be in one of the biggest Marvel movies to come out this year, which is Spider-Man Brand New Day. So that is another added benefit of this show being on Disney Plus, and another example of why this is better than the Netflix series. The fourth reason, the physical powerhouse, Kingpin. The MCU transformed the scope Wilson Fisk into a threat that is physically closer to the comic book. I mean, he has had appearances on Hawkeye now at this point. He's had appearances on Echo. He's shown up in more than just being in Daredevil. He's no longer just a mob boss. The stakes have gotten bigger, and I'm hoping that he's also in Spider-Man Brand New Day as well. He is portrayed as this massive physical force, and he's shown to taking on multiple heroes. And the mayoral threat, his rise to power as mayor of New York, feels more significant because of the legal and social landscape of the entire MCU. It's not just a simple neighborhood. He's no longer pinned into that Defenders bubble. And the fifth and final reason why this show feels and is better than the Netflix distributed series is the strategic narrative synergy that this show has showcasing. This show is part of a larger coordinated plan for the street level characters that is building genuine momentum. You know, there is a big event that's happening in May 2026. After the end of Born Again, you get the Punisher One Last Kill, which comes out on May 12th. Then after that, you have Spider-Man Brand New Day that comes out on July 21st. And then after that, you have the Defenders reunion that is happening in season 3, which is taking inspiration from one of the best Daredevil arcs written that Frank Miller had nothing to do with. And that's Ed Brubaker's Devil in Cell Block D. So you have all that going on, and it's leading to what I believe is a epic street level narrative that hopefully culminates in another big Spider-Man film or a big street level Avengers type film. New Avengers, maybe Thunderbolts Part 2, maybe. We don't know, but I know that it is leading up to something, and it feels like it's finally leading up to something. And Daredevil being tied in closely to the MCU now because they're no longer restrained and handcuffed by that Netflix deal is going to be a benefit. And it's going to be a big reason why the MCU pivots back into a positive flow. And so that being said, I really think that, yeah, it sucks that season 2 so far is not a ratings juggernaut, but I think the goodwill that they regained from season 2 of this television show, The Punisher show, and Spider-Man 4, Brand New Day, is going to do a lot and being a big boost this time next year when it comes to the ratings because people finally see where this series is going. And I really think that people are going to be pleased after Spider-Man Brand New Day comes out. You know, this is a nice little trilogy for the street level heroes, and it's a great rebound for Marvel and Daredevil alike. And those are my reasons why um, the ratings were down 52% and why I think that this show is markedly better than the Netflix series for Daredevil. And that's where I am at on the state of the MCU. And with that, guys, the credits are now rolling, but the conversation doesn't have to stop here. I am the Shogun of Akron, and you've been locked into the Johnny Loves Movies podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, and sound off in the comments below. Keep watching, keep dreaming, and I'll see you back here on that big screen.